Let's kick off. Hi everyone, and welcome to the fourth instalment of our popular Coffee Chats webinar series. I'm Rebecca Ray from CRC TiME, and I'm coming to you from Whadjuk Noongar country in Boorloo, Perth. Today we're discussing working with regional communities. We sometimes hear that researchers, particularly those from metropolitan areas, aren't sure how to go about integrating into a regional community and building the sort of trust needed for authentic research project engagement. We've also heard from regional communities that they've seen researchers come and go. Some of them might be blow-ins who ask for attention, place the region under a microscope, and then the community members hear nothing afterwards. No sharing of results, no updates, and sometimes no thank yous. So today I'm speaking with Amberley Laverick, a CRC TiME top-up scholarship holder doing a PhD with us, and Bev Brosnan, Senior Regional Development Officer at the Midwest Development Commission in WA here, and Bev worked with Amberley during her internship while she was immersed in the region in the Midwest WA. As you'll see, each CRC TiME scholarship holder has the opportunity to embark on a placement, quite often regionally, and that's what we're discussing today. So Amberley, I'm going to kick off with a question to you, and before I say that question, just a reminder, please place any questions in the chat if you have them, and this will be going for a quick 30 minutes, so I hope you have a hot cup of coffee or tea with you. So Amberley, you're one of our wonderful PhD top-up scholarship students based at UWA. You're investigating how communities in the Midwest of Western Australia have experienced mining transitions with a focus on developing community-centric resources to support those transitions. Can you tell us how this project brought you into working in Midwest WA?
Yes, so I had the idea of the topic and I was trying to figure out where in the world I'd like to do the research. I wanted to take a regional approach to this rather than a single mining community or mining site. So Fiona Haslam-McKenzie, hi Fiona, is my supervisor, and she was doing some work up in the Murchison, which is part of the Midwest with Regional Development Australia. So we got talking about the region. It is WA's oldest mining region. There's a lot of different things mined in the Midwest. It's a really interesting region. Lots of people, when they ask about my research, think that automatically that I'm focusing on the Pilbara. There's a lot of people who don't know where the Midwest is. They also don't realise that the Midwest is such a dynamic mining region. So that kind of interested me. And then just Fiona started introducing me to people. I started reaching out to people. I was invited up to a meeting that Fiona was running there. I met Bev. We started a conversation. I also went up with Carolyn Williams, who works in the First Nations team at CRC TiME. She was up there with CSIRO. So I really just started kind of putting my feelers out and having conversations with people, talking about my project, but also asking questions about the region. And yeah, it just kind of went from there. It was this organic process.
As most good projects are, I think. You just kind of have this kernel of an idea and you run with it and see where the avenues take you.
Yeah.
So based on your time with communities in the Midwest, what are some things that you learned working with those regional communities, and how did knowing these change the outcomes of your work? So what you've learned and how it's changed things.
So just to give you everyone some context, I took advantage of CRC TiME's pot of money in my scholarship to go and live in the region. So over a 9-month region, I lived up in the Midwest based out of Geraldton for about 6 months, which gave me the opportunity to come back to Perth when needed. So I think it's important to understand that context. So basically being up there, living in the region, it made me realize I knew nothing about the region. And it was really important for me just to sit and listen and learn from people. And nothing beats having a cup of tea and a bicky with someone, and also just being flexible and open, being willing to spend time talking to people, not about my project, but everyday things. You know, while I was up there, I needed to find a physio. While I was, you know, I had to figure out where my favorite place to get a coffee was. So through that, I learned more about the region and my project than some of the conversations I had specifically about my project. So it just opened up my capacity to learn. And I think that it allowed me to have more depth to my understanding of the region, which then allowed me to ask different questions that I wouldn't even know to ask about.
Yeah, it's different to have a set of questions on a piece of paper than being there and seeing where the conversations lead when you're not speaking about the work.
Yes.
And it might kind of take different turns, and there's a lot, you don't know what you don't know as well. And that
Yes.
may come to light when you're around in the place.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
so on the other side, Bev, the Midwest Development Commission took Amberley on as part of a CRC TiME internship, as we've heard. You're on the employer side, I suppose. What was it like having Amberley around, and what sort of benefits did her contributions bring?
Yeah, thanks. And hello, everyone from Ngunnawal and Yuggera land in Meekatharra, where our office is. We really enjoyed hosting Amberley in the Midwest. She was incredibly eager to learn from all of our team members, and she instantly fitted in. I'd actually moved to Meekatharra before she started work with us. So we had to immediately work out a way of working remotely, getting the ways of communicating right. And fortunately, my team members were really generous too, and they helped me connect her with people locally, providing introductions. We got her coming along to meetings about stuff that wasn't anything to do with her project, but it really, I guess, set up the foundations of her research project, and that, you know, getting her socially connected was really important too. Yeah, so we all learnt from having her in our team as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Bev. Amberley, you know, you could have very easily stayed at home in Perth, right, and done a research project from there remotely in that way, sort of analysing people from a distance, I suppose, if you can put it that way. How did being situated and immersed in the Midwest contribute to your PhD as opposed to staying at home? And you've touched on a few of those points, but if you could keep
So
keep
anyone who knows me knows I would never stay home and do anything. Look, I think the reality is, you know, the academic world is the academic world, and the exciting thing is that there is a lot of encouragement for students now to get out into the world. I know that UWA really encourages PhD students to do our internships, and look, I just think that my research has been able to have a much more human element to it. I mean, the reality is that my focus is mining communities. And so I had to go out to those communities, meet the people, you know, have I don't think that I can overstate how important it was for me to be sitting in a room interviewing people. Every single interview I did was in person. I went to those people's homes in some cases. You know, we met in all kinds of interesting places, and it was me turning up, sitting down and giving people an opportunity to talk and tell their stories about their experiences of mining transitions. And this just isn't possible if I'd stayed in Perth. And I also don't think people would have said yes to me, or they would have said yes to me and given me very kind of stilted responses because they didn't know me. So by the time I asked people to sit down for an interview, I had already spoken to them at least once or twice. Most of them I'd met before in person. And so it just created that human connection. It also allowed me, when I was interviewing people, they were semi-structured interviews. So they were more of a conversation. And because I had spent time in the region, when they were talking about, you know, a particular issue with a road or not being able to get reception between this place and this place, I was like, oh yeah, I experienced that. Or yeah, you know, that storm the other day took out the power. And, you know, it created much more depth to what I was able to ask and what people were willing to share with me.
Yeah, transferred it from sympathy to empathy, right? Because you were feeling the same things and going through the same issues regionally.
And also, I was the butt of many jokes for being a city girl, so
I guess you have to be okay with that too.
yeah, I mean, I was just like, yep, that's me.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting to be put in that position, but I think it can be, if you hold your space in that, it's also the fact that you're the city girl in their space and listening and with open ears, with welcoming arms, sort of thing.
100%.
Yeah, I was going to say that she really brought, I guess, new perspectives on the work we were doing and the Midwest itself. Those fresh eyes and that fresh energy was really important. She's so adventurous in terms of her approach to her life and work, and she was willing to travel alone to meet with people and do the hard yards on outreach, and that's super important. She also had an academic approach to what we were considering in terms of mining and its impact on communities and how mining companies engage with them. And what we, I guess, gained from that is that documentation and that rigorous approach, that backup evidence of what we are hearing or thinking in our communities, what's actually happening here. Someone said to me the other day in Meekatharra, we wouldn't be affected at all if mining stopped here, which surprised me. But this is a strong indication that mining companies have quite a lot more to do in terms of engaging with and supporting communities in our region, and also getting them involved in the planning and post-mine planning out here.
Yeah, thanks, Bev. It's great to hear the other side. So we hear the student side and the employer or internship host side, because often, we've all felt it when someone new comes in with new energy, with new ideas, a different way of thinking, and takes you out of your everyday and brings some of those sparkling sort of avenues of thought. We have a question in the chat. Amberley, you were talking about how some of your PhD study themes were coming out in some of the conversations with the locals. What were some of the themes that were drawn out in the discussions related to mining transitions? What were people sort of saying?
I would say the biggest thing for me is that when we talk about mining mining transitions, people generally think about transitioning out of mining. However, a really strong theme was, first of all, if you don't get transitioning into mining projects done well, then the transition out isn't even, doesn't even matter. So I think, well, it does matter, but it's more difficult to do. So I think what came out of it, and I've been writing about this, is that when communities think about mining transitions, they're thinking about transitions into projects through the operational phases and then out of a project. And also the fact that when you have a mining region, there are multiple projects happening at once, all at different stages of those transitions. And so it's a much more dynamic understanding of mining transitions as not this one particular aspect of a project. So that, I think, was the biggest thing that came through. The second thing that came through was that even though individual people think that they don't have a lot of understanding about mining, because they may not work in the mining industry, once you kind of start the conversation, people understand mining a lot. And I had a few people in the interview say, I actually know quite a lot about this. And so I think one of the big themes is that maybe we're not talking to the right people, researchers need to broaden the horizon of who they have conversations with. I interviewed someone who works at a cultural organisation. I spoke to someone who works in education. I spoke to people who you might not necessarily think are connected to the mining industry, but if you live in a mining region, almost by osmosis, you have an understanding of how that industry works within the region. So yeah, I could go on for hours about this, so I'll cut it off now.
Maybe we'll have to do a follow-up.
Yeah.
Bev, there's a question for you in the chat. What sort of information could we, CRC TiME, or maybe others who have internship programs, What sort of information could we be providing industry or government partners or regional partners to give them confidence that an intern is a worthwhile investment in time? That's such a great question.
Look, I think giving employers the options, like we don't know what people are doing PhDs in, and I'm sure there's some incredibly interesting information out there. So, you know, are there any sample sessions? Are there any initial conversations happening? Because I think it's it's easy to kind of go, let's put something online or let's put a resource kit together. But getting people in the same room and having conversations about what's possible, I guess, is the start off. And that's really how things started with Amberley too. You've got to find the right fit. I guess I'm thinking about speed dating here almost, but I think those kind of sessions where employers get the opportunity to mix with potential PhD candidates that might want to do internships would be a really good thing. I don't know if that's helpful.
That is a fascinating idea that we could follow up on. Thank you. Noted. I have, in the meantime, put in a link in the chat to our other scholarship recipients and work that they're doing, so that if anybody wants to sort of browse, see what's going on already. And I will put another link in a moment to more internship information for PhD students who might be on the chat. Bev, I'm going to keep going.
Sure.
What are 3 things you've observed, or 2 or 5, whatever you like to give me, that you've observed when working with regional communities that may be useful for others when coming in from elsewhere?
Thanks. Yes, I've got my 3, I think. And, you know, I'll couch this by saying I'm no expert. Amberley and I were both chatting earlier about how we would approach things differently. I've been here in Meekatharra for nearly 2 years, and the Midwest 4 years. And I think, you know, there's always different ways of doing things, and we're not experts. But from what I've observed, regional communities may work at a much different pace to you. So you need to allow time more than anything. And that's for communicating with them, for driving and flying, for them to trust you, and to also allow time to return information and findings to them, which you also emphasised earlier. Secondly, you need to enter without judgment, and treat the community like you were going to live there forever, with respect. Don't jump in too quick. Don't make conclusions without checking facts, and really take the time to listen. And I think, yeah, I'm still learning about all of this. Thirdly, don't expect a callback or an email response. You need to show up at events, get out of the car, talk to people, go to them, sit in their house, on their country, in their backyard with them, and look also for where they're going. You know, I talked before about finding the energy. Where are other people hanging out? The swimming pool, the sports club, if you've got one, the pub, and, you know, get out there and socialize. I also think I've seen lots of organisations coming into this town since I've been here. And I think we all like to make a difference. Like, everyone's trying to do their own thing, but there's also sometimes too many things coming in and going on. So where possible, join on to events and initiatives that are already existing and build from them, rather than actually thinking you have to create something new. And that will take a little bit of, you know, a bit of the pressure off the community as well.
Thanks, Bev. I don't know how many of those were, but they were all very good. Whether you give me 3 or 17, I'm happy. I've put a few more links in the chat on Top Up Scholarships info and so forth for those who want to browse. We do have a question in the chat about the point, you don't know what you don't know, about a study area, for instance. And this person's interested in learning more about what techniques his peers are using to develop an understanding of their research stakeholders. I wonder, I'd be interested in hearing, Amberley, about if you have any ideas on maybe new ways that researchers could share that sort of info.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a, thanks for the question, Andrew. This is, yeah, gosh, I don't want to launch into something. I have the benefit that I have a background in community education. So I've spent a lot of my career working in very different ways from this, in different regional communities. And so I think it's having an understanding of building people-to-people relationships and being, as Bev said, being willing to get out of the car, go to events, build time into your project that involves just spending time with people, not talking about what you're doing, not asking anything from them, but actually just being with people, enjoying their company, learning about them and their place. And I think that is such a key starting point to any kind of community relationship building, is just building time in to not talk about your project.
That's such a good point. It's the attitude of being relational rather than transactional, right?
Yes.
You're giving before you're taking, and you're meeting someone in their space, going all the way instead of just halfway and waiting for them to come to you. I think that would open up a lot of avenues.
Yeah.
And researchers, might do well to consider that rather than, I mean, time pressures are obviously a thing, but you might be saving time down the line if you're thinking in terms of time, by creating those relationships.
Yeah.
And they serve everybody, I think. So a question for both of you, and this is a very, very practical one, although we've been very practical the whole way through. Is there anything that you think researchers should know before working on projects about or that affect regional communities? So if I was to put you in the situation of meeting a researcher who's just about to embark on a project in a region, and they just sort of said, "Oh, I know that you've worked in the region. What do you think I should potentially know? What would be helpful for me to know that you haven't already touched on?" I think you've touched on a lot of these points, though.
Yeah, I have two things. One is, as a researcher, you have to figure out what works for you. So I looked at, not everyone can pick up their life and move somewhere for 6 months. Geraldton is only 4 hours away from Perth. So I was working 3 days a week with the Midwest Development Commission, which meant that if I needed to come back to Perth for other things, I had that space. So you have to be very clear on what your capacity is, what you can do, particularly with the resources that you have. So I had my CRC TiME top-up scholarship, pot of money. I had to figure out how to make that work so I could spend as much time in the region as possible. So those practicalities are really important. The other thing is that if you are going into a regional community and you are wanting to extract information from them for your research, because realistically that's what we're doing, they are the experts. And I was talking to Bev about this earlier. People don't have to have, a degree or a PhD or, be a CEO to be an expert. The people living in these regions are experts. And so we need to treat people as the experts, and be, again, just willing to take the time and to sit and to listen and to learn and be flexible and open to changing how we see things. So they're my two takeaways.
Thanks, Amberley. Go for it, Bev.
And for me, I guess I was thinking about this in terms of smiling and saying hello. The most successful projects happen when you're able to find the right people and energy within the community. For example, I came up here with my husband. He'd lived here previously. I hadn't. And we went to get breakfast at the corner store and met a young woman called Tamika King. She smiled. She told us about the best toasted sandwiches in town. And we had a great breakfast. And I guess I then was able to observe how she interacts in the community, and was able to produce some really great outcomes when she was working for Mission Australia Communities of Focus, Meekatharra. And, she's, I guess, it was a matter of finding some of those people that are so connected because they've been born here, lived here for years. And I think if you sit back and observe and get to know them, I think it's really, really helpful. And you can, I guess, if you can harness some of those skills and some of that expertise by, bringing on, engaging and getting them to be consultants. Actually, don't expect everything for free either, in terms of what they can give to you. And I think, that was something I have found very beneficial.
We have a wonderful comment in the chat from Fiona, Amberley's PhD supervisor, noting the points that made the internship or placement successful above and beyond your personal attributes and professional ones. Because Bev, you were such an important touch point for Amberley's project, having had such great connections into the region and the community. So to have you as a sort of resource and a connector, a glue, I'm sure Amberley really benefited from that. And you also provided information about things like accommodation, really useful things like that. And that's crucial for a successful placement, because if we were try and remove the friction from taking a placement on, there might be more successful ones, and people are able to weave it into their lives. So thank you, Bev, for being such a wonderful collaborator and contributor to CRC TiME work and someone's research as well.
Yeah, well, I'm not alone. There are development commissions right across Australia, and they have great people working for them that are well connected. It's our job to do some of this stuff. I also do a lot of volunteer work in the community, and that allows me to be a little bit more connected than not. Other people within my team, like Carl Williams, who's on the chat, volunteers for the SCS in Geraldton. I just feel like some of those things that we do in our communities position us to be able to help others really easily. So reach out if you need to have a chat.
That's lovely. What a great note to end on. Thank you both so much for your time, your energy, and your willingness to work together and learn from each other as well, and learn from the communities in which you serve. Thank you for those who put questions in the chat and who've participated. If you'd like more info on hosting an intern, please give us a yell at CRC TiME. So the email address is hello@crctime.com.au. Give us a yell and we'll see if we can find a really good fit with a student. Alternatively, PhD students, of course, you have Fiona Hasler-Mackenzie as your contact as well for internship organisation. We will be sending out an invite to the next coffee chats down the line. They're around quarterly or so. And if you'd like to stay in touch with more CRC TiME findings and so forth, just go on our website and sign up for some updates on research findings. And some of those might be journal articles or theses that are published by our students like Amberley. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.